as those bookings started to come in early in the year, I started to realize that like, wait a second, this short-term rental space, if you can put systems in place and figure out how to kind of do this thing, you can scale very quickly. And you can basically get me to leave my job as quickly as possible.
What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host,
Emanuele Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emanuele Pani. What's up, E?
My brother, so good to see you. It's a double session for us today. We had our 7-figure boardroom call, which is, I am so excited. I get so fired up just being around like good, like-minded people, you know? So super excited. And then just like super grateful of like really seeing all of the journey that we've done over the last couple of years, right? Being in a room with people that like are a little bit at the beginning and seeing all of the systems that we've integrated. So I have to give a huge shout out to Tasha. As you know, she's my implementer, and without her, I would still be using an Excel spreadsheet and taking people's credit cards on random envelopes in my car. I never did, but in case I was doing it, that's what I did. So yeah, without her, our business wouldn't be what it is. And it just, so I'm so grateful that I'm able to share what she has created and kind of take a lot of credit when a lot of credit is not due to me necessarily, right? But seeing all of the things that we have implemented and all the systems that we have like created and how much of a difference they've made, and being able to share that with our peeps and seeing like how it's helping them, it just gets me super, makes me grateful for Tasha and the business that we have, but also for just like our journey and how we can share it.
100%, man. 100%. Yeah, man, I'm excited. So this week we got a 52 unit hotel under contract. So super pumped for that. Yeah. So this is a big boy. Pretty excited. We're going to go walk it tomorrow and then start our whole due diligence process. Which I was breaking down today on that boardroom call, just showing people like, what does that process look like? What do you need to think through? What are the things that you need to get lined up in order to close something like that? So yeah, I'm excited for that. And then I finally like got over COVID, and then all of a sudden I started feeling like shit again and like started spiking a fever and just getting shakes. And so my wife asked me to go to the doctor, and if you guys that watch the YouTube channel, or if you've been following me for a while on Instagram or whatever, I've had this like weird thing on my neck that was kind of just growing. And they're like, I went and they're like, yeah, that looks really infected and we need to remove that like immediately. So I went in yesterday and then went right into surgery, and they cut this golf ball thing out of my neck. And I'm like, listen, man, I gotta run an event in Miami. I better be good to go. And they're like, yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah. But I got to go pick up some antibiotics because I'm spiking a fever again. So
come on,
but I will be ready to go in Miami. I promise.
You got 24 hours. If not, just let me know. I'll go drop off some soup for you when you get down to Miami on Saturday. As long as by Sunday night you're good, I
will be good come hell or high water. So yeah. I will be good to go. So yeah, man, a lot of good stuff going on right now. Really excited. And my son started first grade, which is really cool. So
cute.
Yeah. So things are good. So I don't want to hold this up because I'm really excited for today's episode. I was just pulling up his bio. We were catching up offline. Fellow masshole who's moved on to greener pastures up in Maine. But today we've got Justin Howe on the show with us. He currently has 14 short-term rentals. He owns 9 of them up in the Acadia National Park area of Maine, which is a beautiful area. If you guys haven't checked that out, you definitely should. So really excited to talk with Justin today and hear his journey and where he's at now. So Justin, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey guys, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, for giving me the time to come on and kind of explain what's going on up in Maine. It's sometimes feels like a forgotten state. So I'm glad to be able to shed some light on it.
Yeah, I feel like if you're not from New England, like you don't appreciate Maine, but it's beautiful up there. Like it's amazing.
It's unbelievable. And to be honest, so I reside in the Portland, Maine area now. But I invest up in Acadia. So it's still about 3 hours north. So there's quite a length of state that you can kind of cover. And it's pretty interesting that the breadth of the landscape that changes from the Portland area all the way up to the Acadia area. So it's kind of cool to kind of be able to see all aspects of it.
I love it, man. So why don't you walk us back through like what were you doing before, what got you into short-term rentals, and kind of where you're at now?
Sure. Yeah. So I've been invested in real estate since basically the end of 2020. I had went to school, like you said, from Massachusetts, ended up going to school in Rhode Island, studying finance and economics, ended up moving on from there, getting a first job, moved to Boston, worked for John Hancock. I was doing a lot of fixed income style work, but I was specializing in the oil and gas space, which is pretty fascinating. That was actually at the time when oil at the first the first blip in oil was hitting about $20 a barrel. So it was a really cool time to kind of dive into this fast-paced finance type role, especially in an industry that every day that I walked in, you didn't know what was going to happen. So did that for about 2 years, and I started to hit a breaking point where I just felt I wasn't being stretched enough. I was looking for something that I can get a little more in the weeds and maybe become more of an expert. So I started to network and came across, I guess, my former boss, but the next role was down in New York City. So I kind of moved more on the equity side, and I ended up working for Citibank down there, doing some equity research. And again, it was in oil and gas. And that was a pretty good experience. I learned a ton. Did that for about 4 years, and I just exited that in June of this year. So it's been only a couple of months of me trying to figure out this new work for yourself, work from home style type work, but it's been fascinating. But I can't appreciate what that job has lent to me to be able to kind of jump into this career path now and kind of start growing this portfolio, because my Excel and financial modeling skills really have helped me kind of look at the real estate asset class and kind of dumb it down to, I guess, a more simple level for me to understand. And then kind of just, once I saw the numbers and you take the emotion out of it, it's kind of easy to just start pulling the trigger on some assets.
Yeah. And I love about, so we're part of a mastermind together, and we connected on a call. And to me, I immediately wanted to have you on the show, because to me, you are the perfect representation of what one of our listeners will be like, right? Somebody that has a great job but also you grew really quickly, right? Because 2020 is when you started investing. I know that you've kind of scaled really rapidly, and it's just like, it's so beautiful to me to see like how you've done it while still having your job. And now you're able to like quit your job in June, and now you're 100% doing this. And I know it was this like, you think this was going to happen so quickly when in 2020 you decided to start investing in real estate, or did you surprise yourself as well?
I definitely surprised myself. I mean, when I was first starting, it was honestly, I kind of fell into the short-term rental space. So, but what I was doing is I was sitting in my apartment in New York City. COVID had hit. Basically had all this time. Let me just shut this door. Had all this time to myself, picked up my first real estate book. And naturally I went to the Long Distance Real Estate Investing by David Green, because I was like, I'm living in New York City. I'm not going to be investing here. So what are we going to do? So that kind of spurred the initial kick up in kind of the asset class. Before that, I was like this big bad equity guy, right? I was like, oh, equities are great, all this stuff. But then you just read something about real estate, and then you start to connect the dots on everybody who's living these financially secure lives and lucrative lives are all invested in real estate. You start to kind of think differently. So that book led to another book, or led to 10 other books. And eventually I kind of was like, all right, this is what I'm doing. And I at first, like I said, I stumbled into short-term rentals, but at first I was going to do these BRRRR strategies down in Philadelphia. So I was living in New York. I was like, oh, I could just rent a car, drive down there an hour, do these things. And I honestly, that entire summer 2020, I was going back and forth to Philly, working with this investor agent. But that was when the market was like really kicking back up. I mean, the market was already hot, but I was going to buy these things on like pennies of the dollar, like 35,000, and then like burr them and have like maybe make them like 75, 80K, but, and have a couple of $100 of income. But, at first that was what I was going to do. I was like full blown on that. Thank God it turned out to be pretty hard for me to really get into that market. It was super competitive. So I ended up kind of pivoting. And that's where I started to kind of look, and I was like, okay, all these podcasts, all these books, everybody says like invest or look where you have some type of connection. And so I at first was like, okay, I'm from Massachusetts, and I kind of looked back there, but I'm not from like the Boston area. I'm from the western part of the state. And I was like, you know what? It's not really a place that I really want to be invested in long term. But I ended up, I do have grandparents and some aunts and uncles that live up in Acadia. And I've been going there for about 30 years. I'm 30 years old. So I've been going there my entire life. And um, I instantly started to think like, okay, maybe there's something to be set up there. So that's kind of when I pivoted and looked up there. I came across a 4-unit opportunity. And at first, 2 of them were short-term rentals, 2 of them were long-term rentals. I knew nothing about short-term rentals, but just running the back of the envelope math, I was like, all right, I think this gives me enough cushion to kind of start testing out this real estate thing, and ended up closing on that. And the first summer was 2021 last year. As those bookings started to come in early in the year, I started to realize that like, wait a second, this short-term rental space, if you can put systems in place and figure out how to kind of do this thing, you can scale very quickly. And you can basically get me to leave my job as quickly as possible.
Oh yeah, the perfect story. Like exactly, like exactly the story. So what does your systems look like? What's your team like? What are some of those things that you've relied upon to help you grow so quickly?
Sure. I would say at first it was one of those things like you're kind of building your parachute as you're descending. But when I first started, I closed on that property. It was really good that I actually had to like learn everything hands on. So I ended up closing in that in December of 2020. I had to get some renovations done during the spring. I ended up moving up to Maine in April of 2021. Went right up to the Bar Harbor area, stayed with some family there to kind of really get my hands dirty, because I was working from home anyway, so I could kind of do that. So at first it was just me. So, I mean, I was learning things on the basics of like the turnover process and getting a cleaner and making sure that they're doing this and that, and okay, how to run the Airbnb platform and like different pricing strategies. I will say my pricing strategy at the first year was not that great, because I was booked out basically by like March and April for a very seasonal business that's in the summer. So I know now to push pricing, but then I didn't learn. But what ended up happening was business started to come in. Once the bookings were there, I started to implement kind of the easy automated messages, and could see how that could be offloaded pretty quickly. The bookkeeping, I was still doing hands-on. I basically was a one-man band. What ended up happening was by the middle of the summer, when I knew that this was exactly how I was going to start investing in real estate and kind of exit corporate America, what I ended up doing is I started to seek more opportunities. So I connected with a real estate professional, or an agent there that invests themselves. They're actually a family friend too, so it worked out. And I started targeting more assets. And with the thought of me targeting more assets, I knew that I couldn't necessarily I couldn't continue to grow and kind of do all that on my own, or at least I didn't really know what I didn't know at the time. So I ended up coming across an old buddy from high school that we were still pretty close. And he works for he worked for a property management company for assisted living out of Boston. He was living in Boston at the time. And I kind of just showed him what I was getting into. And it instantly clicked with him. And he was like, this is awesome. Like, this is like, he was thinking about different ways to utilize different technologies and do this and that. And I kind of asked him if he wanted to help me kind of integrate some of these things, some of the first technologies. And that's when he ended up kind of coming on. I paid him like just a here and there. It wasn't anything, but I was able to convince him to kind of come and I'd hire him full time to come manage the portfolio, especially as I grew. But I would say that what we have integrated since has been kind of the channel manager. We use Guesty, and then it took us until earlier this year to really well, we kind of heard about Price Labs, but didn't really look into it too much because he was doing a lot of dynamic pricing himself. But as soon as we saw the value in, I think we did like a trial on it. We're like, let's see this. We threw it on one unit to kind of see the difference. And we figured out pretty quickly that you could still have the dynamic pricing, but still have control of it. So it's not like you're just giving it all up to Price Labs and you hope for the best. And so once we started to see that, and we saw actually for the price of it is very, a very low cost technology. We ended up implementing that. And then through connection with you guys, we were chatting on Breezeway, and I ended up following up with that technology, and we're integrating that currently. So I don't have much to speak on that, but it looks like it could be a very amazing piece of technology, especially for our operations side, for the turnover and the maintenance portion of it.
I love it. What a journey, bro.
So you got your first one about a year ago. How many are you at now?
So I have 9 total units. One of them's a long-term rental just because there was, I think it would just take too much capital. It's an old house, take too much capital to kind of kick the boys that live in there out and kind of do it. So it might come down the road, but I have one long-term rental. I have 8 short-term rentals, and I'm closing on another one, another 3-bedroom home next week. And then we ended up starting to take on some third-party management stuff. So we managed another 5 additional units.
That's pretty quick in a year.
So from 0 to 14, essentially.
Yeah, like I said, the first one was the 4 unit, and then I ended up getting a 2 unit after that, and then 3 different condos. And those all came at the end of last year. So the winter was painstaking, and it was me basically moving. Even though I had an apartment in Portland, I'd moved up to Bar Harbor for the winter to do I had a lot of projects because these places needed some decent capital to get rent ready.
So what's the plan now? So it sounds like, are you out of the job now? This is like your full-time thing?
This is it. Yeah. As soon as I now the way that this all worked out is it worked out perfectly, I guess, somehow, but maybe the stars aligned. But when I got that first 4 unit, I was doing back of the envelope math, and I basically said, hey, if I can close on 5 more properties or 5 more units, short-term units by the end of the year, and get them up and running by next season, then my goal was I would quit my job once I surpassed my income from that job. So back of the envelope math, I ended up putting that goal in place. I was able to close on that. So I knew it was basically just a timeline of me getting, I don't know, 5 units ready at that point, which turned out to be quite the experience. But that was basically it, is I basically put that goal in place and kind of knew. So yes, I did just exit in June, right as those units kind of all went online in, I would say they staggered from April and May. I kind of worked with my boss, and I told him I didn't want to leave him out to dry. So I basically told him what I was doing, but I was transparent with him a year ago, last summer. I kind of knew what I was going to do. I told him I'd be phasing out with him, and we worked together. But yeah, June 23rd was the last day of the W-2. So it's full time now.
That's amazing, dude. Congratulations. And I think it's cool how you were transparent with your boss, because I know when I left my job, I was nervous as hell to give my notice, because I wasn't like, something just told me one morning, like, today's your day. So I just did it. And we weren't we were close. Like, we were under contract on our first hotel. So I knew within the next couple months I was going to leave. And my boss could have easily just let me go that day, but he appreciated the fact that I was giving him a heads up. And I was like, I'm here to just help with this transition to replace me. And he said something that was so interesting. He was like, man, I'm so jealous of what you've been able to do. And I just found that so fascinating because I think so many people are afraid that their boss or whoever is going to hate them when they, go to leave. But deep down, most people don't enjoy what they're doing. And they're secretly jealous of you going out and building something for yourself and creating your own life. That hopefully it just inspires other people to do the same. So don't worry about the haters. Be transparent with all that stuff.
And when you have a boss that loves what they're doing, they would love for you not to be part of their team if you're not passionate about it. So they'll even more supportive about you affording. And again, like, it's the one life we got, right? So I'm like, I don't understand why people are afraid of disappointing other people more than they're afraid of disappointing themselves, right? So it's just like, it's a matter of fact that, like, even if your boss is disappointed, even if your team is disappointed, especially like big corporate America, it's just part of the con that they make you feel like you matter. At the end of the day, as soon as Mike left the big company, like the big company job, they'll find somebody to replace me in a second, right? And then by, a couple months, 6 months, a year later, they'll be like, yeah, Mike used to be here. Now he's free, And some people will be jelly, but most people will be just supportive and kind of similar to what happened with Justin.
So I'm curious, like, so what's the goal now? So, right. So you got that finish line, you're out of the job now. Congrats. It's amazing. So where do you see the company going in, say, the next 12 to 24 months? Like, what's your next target right now?
Yeah. So recently kind of come to the conclusion that I want to pour a lot of effort into the short-term rental, the management business. I'll continue to kind of pick up. I'm putting on pause a little bit of my acquisition, just given the uncertainty and kind of what's going on. I'm trying to stack some cash, and I'd like to kind of personally maybe just stack my chips and be able to kind of diversify into some type of commercial asset, like when the time's right, I don't know, hopefully I can get a good entry point, but that's kind of personally what I'm looking to do with the portfolio. And that's not to say if some sweet deal comes across and I know it's just going to be a killer short-term rental, I'll probably pick it up, but I'm not going to be out with a pounding the pavement for some leads. But to be honest, most of my leads have really come from that agent. So it's been pretty just straightforward. I mean, he's an investor himself. Him and his buddies do the same thing up there. It just happened to be that they went through an acquisition tear and they were on pause. So like he funneled me just stuff, and it was fantastic. And plus, I really didn't know at the time what I was looking for and how to run those numbers. So he was able to kind of help shed some light and kind of help us understand the underwriting. But what I'm really going to focus my time and effort in is the management business. Like I said, there's a great opportunity up there, and I've kind of stumbled upon it because it turned out when I was starting to acquire all these properties, and I realized that I didn't want to do that. Maybe I could have figured it out and did the operations myself, but I didn't want to. So I ended up started to search like local property managers that kind of would take care of it. And there was really not much competition out there. And there really wasn't anybody who had the level of service that I was looking for. I wanted a full package thing. And I wanted them to really push pricing, because that's kind of what I learned, is that this market can absorb that. So there was nobody out there realistically that kind of had that in place. So the dynamic shifted because I went to go hire my buddy full time to come manage my portfolio. And then we saw this opportunity. So we ended up creating a property management entity. And now we're going down the third party route as well. So he's now taking distributions and whatnot through that. So it's worked out a little differently, but there's so much upside because of the fact that there's nobody around to actually manage these properties. And I guess what's unique, and it may be unique or not, I'm sure it's still a hurdle in other markets, but the labor supply in the local area that we're in is very limited. I mean, I know it is everywhere, but where Acadia National Park is on an island, and they have long-term housing issues there. So a lot of things are being converted to short-term rentals and whatnot, but they have long-term housing issues there. So a lot of the people, I guess more or less what you consider the blue-collar workers that would kind of help be your boots on the ground, they're not a lot of them around because they can't afford to live. So they are getting pushed out 40, 50 minutes out from our local market. So that has been the biggest challenge as well. But I see it as the opportunity because I've been able to kind of integrate, or we're starting to integrate a couple of, like, honestly, some rock stars on our team within the kind of the cleaning aspect of it and the maintenance aspect of it, that we can really focus, if we can kind of make that the heart of, I guess, this management business, and really focus on having the best cleaning service and the best maintenance technicians kind of around, or at least just being able to have a hold of them, that we basically control the market, because nobody else would be able to find cleaners. I mean, I struggled for, up until I found Liz, who's my rockstar cleaner, and her company. It was almost a nightmare to find consistent cleaners. And so I think that's where the opportunity presents itself for the management business.
Yeah. I love Justin, because I love, and this is what I love about you the first time we chatted and connected, right? Is that there's that vision. And to me, like, this is why I wanted you on the show, because you have really created, and I think like just the fact of like how your brain works is probably be helpful for you in that aspect, but it's just you really created this little path for yourself. And it's very much about, like, a lot of the times people get super convinced that there's a certain way to do life versus going towards there is the least resistance, right? And you've kind of flown through where there's the least resistance, being very open. And then now you're seeing the opportunity. And I love every aspect of it, because you're touching on a lot of things that we've talked about on the show for a very long time, right? It's just like, get some hands-on experience, figure out your system. You can start with your own property and then start putting the team in place, because there's always going to be a like who, not how kind of conversation. And then you start realizing that like more and more of your time is going to go into like casting the big vision and continue to like enroll excellent team members into it. So I'm super excited for you. And I know, like, the only thing I knew about Maine is that you have a lot of like lobster up there. You're like, oh, Maine. I'm like, oh yeah, lobster. That's all I knew. This is supposed to show in your I am, but you know, I'm excited, man. And I think hopefully from the show you'll get somebody that has a property up there that needs some help.
I just want to point out something that I think is super important, and it's more of a mindset thing, because I know exactly what he's talking about, because I've got some stuff in New Hampshire, and it is very, very challenging to find reliable people up there in some of those small, highly seasonal markets. But the fact that you saw that as an opportunity to go out there and diligently look for the best people to build that team, you saw an opportunity where a lot of other people would just see a headache and they would walk away. And that's a difference from a successful entrepreneur that like has that vision and they're like, there is a need here and I will figure this out, versus somebody that's looking to make a quick buck. And they're like, oh, this is too much work, and they leave. So it's a key distinction. It was just something that he said that was so subtle, but I wanted to just highlight that because it's massively important that if you have the right mindset and you have that vision for what you can build, as long as you persist, like he said, it took him a while to find those cleaners, but once he did, now he's set, right? Now he has basically cornered that market. So just wanted to give you some kudos on that, man, because that's huge.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I think in a nutshell, what I'm looking to do is I want to create it sounds weird, but I want to create the best cleaning business up there that happens to do property management, because it's the property. I mean, you guys know too, like there's so much technology and systems in place on the back end. That's like, it's really not that difficult to kind of go and market and kind of do the communications and kind of that stuff. But it's the whole turnover process is the biggest, like it's the bloodline. So I really just think if we focused on growing, honestly, just the best cleaning business on the island, which basically will demand as much work as we can, but also it'll also drive the best cleaners to us. And my goal too is I'm already starting to talk with my cleaner about coming in-house, because now I basically see my way of hurdling, I think, the challenges of like staffing by taking Liz in-house. So I'm basically giving her we'll give her some profit sharing or however it's going to work. But I'm taking her from a low margin cleaning business that she runs, but has no real business experience for. And I'm giving her an opportunity where we have all the systems in the business sense, and she gets upside in a much larger higher margin business. And then I cut out the middleman. So then, like, for example, one of the biggest challenges is that most people on the island, they're like, oh, I'm charging 30 or $30 an hour for a cleaner and for whatever. So stuff like that. Or like her, she charges X and she's in the middle, so she's going to make some margin. But I realized that I'm like, okay, well, first of all, I don't care about how much. I don't want to make any margin on the cleaning side of the business. I want to make it on the management side of it. So if I basically take Liz out of it, I can start paying people $50 an hour. And if I can, and I think that in itself is going to drive so much demand and all the cleaners basically to come want to work for us, that will basically control the market. And at that point are basically, we'll be making our money on the high margin management business. And I have basically given opportunity to some other, like Liz, who's the cleaner, to kind of have upside in it.
I am so happy you came on the show. It was such a good call on my side. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. But it's just literally like, and I love the concept, right? Because again, it's the path of least resistance and seeing value. Like a lot of the times, like if you continue to approach the problem how it's always been approached, you're not going to be able to see where the opportunity is. But being somebody that has have a very interesting life, one, but also like a very interesting brain that has done a lot of different things, you can start seeing where the connections is and where the value is, and like, it makes sense. I mean, like I have multiple businesses, but I know the one business that is the lead driver for everything else. And then when I focus on that business, I know that my secondary businesses that are interconnected to that one business are going to grow. But if instead I focus on growing all businesses at the same time without having a main area of focus, all of them grow, but they inch forward just a little bit. Whereas by focusing on like my biggest business, it like almost yanks the rest of the business up with it. And I think that's what's going to happen with you guys. Because the moment you own the market and all the cleaners, it's going to yank everything else up.
And I think just to give context too. So whether you go that approach, which I think makes total sense, where you bring them in house, either way, as you continue to scale, and I've gone through this a couple different times in some different regions, as you continue to scale, you have to, at least in my experience, I've basically had to coach my cleaners on how to grow their businesses, because they're super hard workers, but like Justin said, a lot of times they just don't understand. Like I give them a copy of the E-Myth. I walk them through. I did a 2-hour Zoom with my cleaners in Florida the other night because I've been sending them a lot of business. And one of the guys at the company literally fell asleep at the wheel the other night because he was just working nonstop. I'm like, dude, this is dangerous. Like we need a timeout. Let me coach you through this. Let's go through your org chart. What do you need? How do we get you an assistant to handle all the back end? Like when you can do that and add value and show them that you care, one, they're going to be more loyal to you, but two, they're going to thrive as well. And this, like you've said multiple times, it's just, how can I create opportunities for other people? And I don't know if it was Osborne or somebody else that I heard a long time ago. They said, if I could build my business and get 5 other people to become millionaires through my business, like that's a good reflection of like the company and the culture that I've built where everybody's winning, right? Not just like, hey, how can I pay my cleaners to the least to try and squeeze out as much as possible? It's just a different frame of mind. When you add enough value and you create enough opportunities, you will grow and you'll have loyal people that will support you so that you're not locked to your computer 24/7. So it's just a different mindset shift as you're growing your business.
Yeah, I agree. I think to your point too, one thing I noticed is that as soon as we started to really help Liz with and take more control of her business, but like really lend our time and energy, our resources for honestly for free, to show her and start putting systems in place that technically she doesn't work for us yet, but we're putting in systems in place for her entire business because it's making her life easier. She's able to staff easier. And just having that, I know, is assurance that we're not going to have issues for our portfolio at this point. So, but I agree. I think it's the whole thing. One of the biggest focus we've had lately is on staffing. So she really has no formal onboarding or training program. And so we basically, the first thing I did was I told her she had to structure her pay differently. And instead of paying people by the job, she had to pay them by the hour, because it's how people their workers were looking at it. I guess competitive workers were looking at it. So we ended up pushing up the rate to like 35 or $40 an hour. And instantly she had so much interest. And so she's actually at a point where she's like taking a pause because she's like, I have too many people that want to come work. So, which isn't a bad thing. But now the biggest problem is what we're working on now is basically what do we do when we actually acquire somebody or she brings somebody on? Because there's still inefficiencies at times, right? And it's like there's a lack of systems. So we're basically having a complete onboarding and training program so that basically when they get in, we give them a big long sheet, could be digital or paper or whatnot, but it's basically going to bring them through the cleaning process, all the tips, all the stuff. We're going to have a tutorial video with basically walking them through because Liz is fantastic. She's got everything in her mind, but she just thinks that it's intuitive that everybody else knows it. So that's her problem. So we got to get it out. We got to get it onto a video. We got to get it on the paper, which we started to do. And we're basically going to roll that through. Then we're basically going to take each individual new person and we're going to basically have them go on a shadow with a senior cleaner that's already been through it, where they don't clean. They're just there kind of observing. Then the next time they would kind of do a co-clean where two people would, they kind of partner with that senior person and clean a unit. And then the third time is basically, hey, you're out on your own. At that point, I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but they should have enough experience and knowledge at that point to be able to follow the system in place, which is through Breezeway, a bunch of checklists, all this stuff. And there should really be, you should eliminate a lot of the headaches that Liz currently has with the new people that she's bringing on because she just, I think, expects them to be these rock star cleaners, but nobody really knows what to do, I guess.
Yeah. No, but I love it. Breezeway is going to be super, super helpful for you guys in like creating that. Our Breezeway checklists are this like ever growing, ever evolving kind of thing, right? Because every property has specific property, specific checklist, general checklist. But I also like really like want to acknowledge because it's so evident how good you are in your role as being kind of like the visionary, because you can tell how much time you spent kind of going ahead and seeing like what are things that may or may not happen further down the road and how you get kind of create systems around it. Because again, like to me, that is the value of a business owner and somebody that like grows a business. It is understanding like, yeah, how do you find great people? How do you support them? How do you encourage them? And what are some of the hurdles that they're going to see or they may come up with? And how can I support them? Or how can I kind of like help them create the systems they need to survive the growth? So you're going to do well, man. I'm excited.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I definitely like taking the step back and being the visionary. I lucked out. Like I said, I've had rock stars that have been able to kind of come and join me. Like I said, Pat is my business partner on the management business. He's kind of my integrator. He does the operations and he's just awesome at it. So like, honestly, I'm not in the weeds. I don't deal with any of the management business for the most part, except for more or less directing, trying to systemize, like doing kind of more high level stuff here and there. But Pat is just doing amazing things, kind of making sure that all the crazy shit that comes through my head is is actually integrated or passed on, because we'll chat on it. Like, that's a little crazy. And I'm like, all right, I think so. We'll hold off on that for now.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, before we get into the last question, first of all, again, like E said, I want to acknowledge you and thank you for coming on here and just sharing your experience with the listeners. Truly appreciate it. And where can the listeners learn more about you and your management company? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I'm kind of old school. I do have some social media. I'm trying to get, I used to have it. I was off of it for years. So I'm kind of integrating it back in because I see the benefit of it for the business. But they can find me on Instagram. I think I have a TikTok somewhere, but they should just be at justin.howe_MP. And we also have mpvacationrentals.com is our URL for our management business, but they probably won't be able to have much access to that because we're somebody's revamping our site at this point. But if somebody wants to reach out to me personally, they can reach out at justin.howe@maybethproperties.com.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, the last question that we like to ask all of our guests is, what is your number one secret to success with short-term rentals?
I think we hit on it a bunch of times today, and it is the delegation of work to rock stars. I mean, focus all your time and energy to finding people and pay them well, because that's what I think. Rock stars don't stay around if they don't get paid well, right? So I think that's where the disconnect is. I was very open with when I knew Pat was coming on board, when I came across Liz, when I came across Enola, who does our maintenance for us. When I could see that they want to work with us and do all these things, I'm very open to basically paying it whatever it means necessary. I mean, I just want to keep these people, and I know if I put up the investment in the time and energy now with these people, that it's just going to come tenfold. So don't cheap out. Just systemize and delegate to some rock stars, and it's not going to be that hard.
Love it, man. Well, thank you again for coming on here. Truly appreciate it. And for all the listeners, hopefully you guys took some notes. There were a lot of gems in there around effective leadership and casting the vision and going after those higher level employees. So Justin, thanks again for being here, man. Truly appreciate it.
Guys, I really appreciate it for coming on and telling my story.
Awesome.
Thanks, bud.
All right. Take care, everybody. Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.